So I have 3 of the books that I read this month. I actually read 9, but I either packed them or I got them from the library and have given them back since. So it's not going to make a good thumbnail. This month I read 9 books, which is pretty good for me. Usually I read about 6 to 7, but I mostly read manga, so that's why I ended up reading so many. First book I read was Body Grammar by Jules Omen. This is a story about a girl who has always been scouted to be a model ever since she was a kid. Always rejected that idea. She didn't want to be a model until she models a dress for one of her friends because as a favor, and then when that friend dies, she kind of goes into the modeling industry as kind of a way to escape and also to honor her friend who was a fashion designer. This book was really interesting because I thought it was going to be more of a critique on the fashion industry. I really assumed it was going to be kind of dark, how it was going to talk about, what models have to eat, what they go through, that kind of thing. But honestly, this girl doesn't go through a lot of that kind of thing. She talks a little bit about what they're supposed to eat and what they can't eat. She meets one photographer she meets one nasty photographer who, is sexist. But apart from that, this book is mostly about her trying to tackle her grief and at the same time tackle the feelings that she has for one of her friends, for her best friend, and just kind of people that she meets. And she meets a lot of really good, interesting characters throughout this book. And it's kind of, it focuses more on the grief than I thought it would, which is good with me. I am a sucker for any book that covers grief. So I read was Oshinoko, which is a manga. I'll put it up on the screen because I don't have it. It is in a box in the living room. That book is about a idol, is what they call them. She basically is kind of like a K-pop member, I think. I'm not quite sure. She is... she's like 17. She ends up getting pregnant, but he wants to hide the pregnancy because idols are supposed to be seen as these perfect people, and a pregnancy would ruin her image. She has a doctor that is supposed to be delivering her babies. When she goes into labor, he ends up actually getting murdered, and he gets reincarnated as one of the twins that she ends up having. So I didn't really read much about this book when I got it. It's really generalized on the back of the book. It doesn't really tell you a lot about what it's about. But honestly, it took a turn a couple of times. The book I thought was going to be about this girl and struggling with being a parent, and then maybe having a romance with this doctor. I don't know what I thought it was going to be. But then he ends up getting reincarnated as one of her kids. And so he's trying to help her get famous, basically, while still maintaining his image as being a child. It critiques a lot about the industry, the kind of the acting industry, the music industry, that kind of thing, and what people go to in order to become famous. So it was really interesting. It took a lot of turns. It definitely surprised me. So yeah, it was pretty good in the end. I read the second manga in the Golden Sheep series. That's basically a series about a girl and her friend, a girl who moves away from her hometown, leaves for a couple of years, and then comes back when I believe they've already graduated high school, or maybe they're in high school. But she expects things to be exactly the same, and when she comes back, her friends are not the same people she thought they were. So the second book, I don't know how much to go into with sequels because it's going to ruin the first one. But it tackles a lot about bullying and the effects that your parents have on you, and how you turn into the type of people because of what your parents did to you, and how you can kind of not become those people. I am thinking about reading the third one because it took a little bit of a turn, but I haven't decided yet. So the next 3 books that I read were from the Fearin series. This is a story about an elf. She was a part of an adventuring party a long time ago, and they all defeated a great evil and they became these famous heroes. And then as they got older, she stayed kind of the same because she's an elf and she's basically immortal. And these friends start slowly dying off, and she has to kind of deal with that. And she's an interesting character because she's very blunt. She is cold at sometimes. She kind of is selfish as well, and then she does certain things that make you realize that she does have a heart after all. And she says that she's only, she was only a part of this adventuring group for 10 years, so it wasn't a big part of her life. But at the same time, she still visits these people, and she takes an apprentice from one of them. But the second and third book are about her and the apprentice that she takes from one of her old adventuring parties members. And kind of this apprentice taking care of her, even though she's younger than Firen. And it was really surprised because there is some really good action scenes and some really good lines and good. It's really fun, and the action scenes are really cool and really interesting, and it's more actiony than I thought it would be. I thought it would be more of like a wholesome, just gallivants around, but there are some demons that she faces, and it gets pretty violent in the middle. But apart from that, it's really good. I think I'll probably continue the series. I haven't been buying them. I've only bought the first one. I've been getting the rest from the library, so I'll probably continue doing that. The last manga that I read in this month was called Orange. I had a compendium. I think it's split into two of them. But it's basically a story about a girl who gets a letter from her future self saying that she needs to save the life of one of her friends, who ends up dying in high school. And she's given kind of a list of every day and the decisions that her future self had made that she wished she could change. And so she's given a list of what she should do differently. And it's a really good story. I really liked it a lot. It's I haven't read the second one as of yet, but it goes between the current story of these kids in high school, and then it goes to the future where they've lost this friend and kind of the grief that they're facing, which I read a lot of books about grief apparently this month. But it's kind of interesting to see the difference between what happens when she changes things and what she doesn't. And I don't know how it's going to conclude because I haven't read the second one, but I think the only problem that I had with it is this girl is so oblivious when it comes to romance. And even like in the middle of this book, which is like this thick, she's still like, oh, does this guy like me? And he's been like dropping hints forever. Like, I don't pick up on hints very well, especially when it comes to romance, but I'm not that bad. So that got a little frustrating from time to time, but apart from that, it was really interesting. I'm interested to see where it goes. Next book that I read was Aces Wild. This is a story about a kid in high school who is the son of a woman who owns a casino in Las Vegas, and she ends up getting arrested for criminal activity, and he suspects that her rival, who owns another casino, is the reason why she ended up going to jail. So he's out for revenge, decides to recruit his friends from the internet who all happen to be asexual or aromantic, and he decides that they are going to try and take revenge and find some sort of incriminating information to get him in jail as well. So I thought this book was really interesting. I really liked the representation. You don't see a lot of asexual or aromantic characters in books, but especially not 5. I think there's 5 of them. And I think the only problem I had with the representation was that there was not a lot of instances where they even talked about the fact that they were asexual. It was just the fact that they were in an asexual group on the internet was how they met. And so there's not a lot of... they don't talk a lot about like the struggles that you face when you're asexual or aromantic or anything like that. He doesn't come out to his family. He keeps it a secret, and they're just friends. And I really like the banter between the friends. I think that's where the book really shines. The problem that I have, and that I know a lot of people have with this book, because I've read some of the Goodreads reviews and some people are very angry about it, is the fact that this book is not a heist. And on this cover, it says Aces Wild, a heist. They, for the most part, do not... It's not like Ocean's 11. Like, don't expect that kind of thing with this book. They go into this... They end up finding a secret casino, basically. A room that's a secret casino. And they're basically just there trying to eavesdrop. That's their main thing, is that they eavesdrop. There's a little bit at the end where he's trying to find the information that he needs, and he kind of like sneaks around the casino for a little bit, but for the most part, it's just them eavesdropping. There's not a lot of action to this book, and I kind of am okay with that because I really like the banter between the characters, and I thought it was a really good book, but a lot of people were really pissed off, so just know when you're going into it that it's not a heist. Don't think it's going to be Ocean's 11, Six of Crows, something like that. It's not going to be that kind of book. Last book that I read, I also got from the library. It's called Message Not Found. This book was pretty good. I like this book a lot. Book about a girl who her friend dies going over a pass. They live in Alaska, and there is a really snowy pass that she went on and ended up going off of the road and dying. In order to cope with her grief, her friend takes this AI program that you can basically put messages and texts and emails into the program, and it will simulate the person whose text you put into the program and pretend to be that person. So she takes her friend's texts and all of her emails and stuff and ends up stealing other things in order to put it into this AI and basically have her friend back. I'm a sucker for these kind of stories because there's so much text messages and things like that, and I love books that do that. I'm a sucker for those. I always have been. Even if the book wasn't good, I would still buy it. Like anything that like social media on it, or emails and text messages and instant messenger if you're old like I am. So I'm a sucker for those kind of books, so I was pretty excited to read it in the beginning. The issue that I thought I was going to have with this book is it felt really repetitive. Like, she is going through her grief, and it feels like she just gets stuck in her grief. Like, she has similar conversations with her friends over and over again. She has similar conversations with the AI that she calls V. Her friend was named Vanessa, but she calls her AI friend V in order to not trigger herself with more grief. But I ended up realizing that it was more authentic. It was kind of an authentic look at grief, because grief is repetitive. It's thinking that you're okay and then being triggered by something and then feeling those feelings all over again. Like, especially with this book only takes place over a couple of months. This girl is still pretty fresh in her grief, and it's not like you go through the 5 stages of grief and then you're cured and then you're just fine. I feel like when you're grieving, you go through the 5 stages multiple times, and it takes a lot longer than just a couple of months to really process the fact that someone has passed. And so I think that this was a really authentic look at grief and how someone might handle it and what you might do in order to feel like that person is still around. She ends up doing some bad things in order to get the information that she needs in order to make her friend seem more authentic. Bailey, the main character, doesn't know why she was on this path to begin with, so she starts trying to dig up more and more things. That she starts stealing phones from people. She starts trying to get more text messages, more emails to load into this bot to try and find out the mystery, basically. And yeah, I thought it was a really good book. I thought I'm a sucker for anything that talks about grief, so I was a big fan of this one. Sometimes I wish that she talked a little bit more to V, the bot that she creates. It kind of jumps, it almost goes through them at the beginning of the chapter and has conversations with the bot, but this book spends most of its time talking to the other characters and other people, and there's one friend that's way too nice. I found her very suspicious, which probably says something about me as a person, but it spends a lot of time trying to figure out this mystery, and there is a romance element to it that I really wasn't a huge fan of, because I wanted it to revolve around the grief and the mystery, and I really didn't feel like the romance was necessary. But I don't know, it's a teen book. There's usually a romance somewhere in there, so. Okay, let's talk about what I'm going to read in the month of September. I'm currently in the middle of 2 books. One of them is The Thursday Murder Club. This is a book about 4 older people who are living in a senior citizen apartment complex, basically, and they have a murder club where they try and solve unsolved mysteries, and then when an actual murder happens in the complex, they try and solve it. So far, it's pretty interesting. This book is really good at making you hate certain characters. Like, there's one dude that, God, you're supposed to hate him, and he sucks. This author did a really good job on that. So, I'm about halfway through with this book. It took a long time for the murder to actually happen, but it doesn't really bother me. The next book I was in the middle of reading is The Diviners by Libby Bray. This book is about a girl named Evie. Yeah. She's from a small town and ends up getting sent to New York from her parents end up sending her to New York because she is been behaving poorly and has been getting in trouble. And so she gets sent to New York, and she has a secret power where she can hold an object and know people's secrets or something like that. At least that's what happens in the beginning of the book. And then she finds out that she could probably help find a murderer with her power. And that's all I know about it. It's a series. It's bigger than I thought it would be for a YA series. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. The margins are weird. Like, the words go up pretty high. So that might take me a while to read. The third book I'm actually going to talk about is not one that I'm planning on reading. It's one that I read half of, and I think I'm going to DNF. It's Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen, and I know everybody loves this book. I know they do. I think they think it's quirky and fun and things like that. It's basically about a girl who's undercover. She's working, not undercover, but she's working at a Catholic church as a secretary, but she's a lesbian atheist. And she has a lot of anxiety, and she thinks about death a lot. I can see why people love this book so much. It's really fun in some ways, and I could see how it would be really interesting and entertaining if you don't have a lot of anxiety. I unfortunately have a lot of anxiety, and so her thought spirals become my thought spirals. And she has a particular fear that I also have, and that is your apartment burning down. I have a huge fear of that, and it has always been a problem for me ever since I was a kid. I've always been afraid of fire, and this girl has thought spirals about it, and it makes me spiral. So I might give it another shot. I'm not quite sure, but I think this is the first time that I have to say, for my mental health, I might have to DNF a book. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. I think this is the first time I've done one of these videos where a cat has not interrupted anything. They're both sleeping on the bed, so unfortunately you do not get to see any kitties today. Maybe I'll put a picture of them up. I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you're reading, and yeah, I'll check back in next month.